In this video, we're going to talk about how to measure the success of a Snapchat ad campaign. So this video will briefly run through how to see the results of your Snap ad.
Let's take a look at how your Snap Ads campaign is performing. To see your results, click to open the dashboard. Once you're in, you'll see how many active campaigns you're running right now. You can choose which metric to graph and see changes over time, such as spend and impressions. You can see how things shape up from day to day. You can also change the date range of what you see on the dashboard. You can choose to sort by campaigns, individual ad sets, or see all your ads at once. If you're trying to find something specific, use the search bar. You can also customize what information you see in the table. Click Customize Columns and choose which metrics you're interested in. Click Save to update the table. Click on a campaign or ad set to chart its progress. This will narrow the view accordingly. Click here to download your results.
That gives you a good brief overview of how the analytics features work in Snapchat. But let's talk a little bit more about measurement. So Snapchat can tell you how many times your ad was served and offer tracking support from MRC accredited third parties as well. So it can verify the amount of time your ad was served. It can also give you first and third party metrics for how much attention your ads received. So how many times they were actually viewed. You can also measure things like reach, so how many Snapchatters actually saw the ad, their demographics of that audience, and more. They can look at the resonance, so that's an in-depth analysis for equity metrics such as brand awareness, brand favorability, and brand consideration and purchase intent. And then they can measure reactions so that they can determine the impact for sales and store visits using some sophisticated modeling that they've created and by partnering again with leading third-party measurement firms. So let's look at what some of the metrics are that you might want to measure and some of the definitions of those. So first of all, you have impressions. Impressions is the total number of times your ad was actually served. And then video views is the total number of impressions that meet the qualifying video view criteria of at least 2 seconds of consecutive watch time or a swipe up action on the top snap. So those are ones that have a little bit longer, a little bit more engagement. And then they talk about quartiles. So the 25% quartile is the number of snaps that were watched to 25% of duration, and then 50%, and then 75%. Same story. Completions is the number of snaps that were watched to 97% of their duration, so almost all the way through. And then the average screen time is the average number of seconds spent watching your ad across all of the impressions. The spend is the total amount of money that you spent on your ad campaign to date. The eCPM is the effective cost per 1,000 impressions. So this is the average cost for every 1,000 impressions you get. And again, you're paying on a cost per click basis or cost per action basis. So not everybody in those, not every one of those 1,000 people will actually engage with your ad. So the cost in the effective cost per 1,000 is the cost for the people that did engage with your ad, and then it's based on the number of people who actually were served your ad. And then you have your eCPV, your effective cost per video view, and this is the average cost per qualified video view. And again, the video view is at least 2 seconds or a swipe up, whichever comes first. To define swipe up, that's the total number of times Snapchatters swiped up to view your attachment. And the attachments can only be viewed when the Snapchatter opts to swipe up on the top snap. The swipe up rate is the average number of swipes per impression, and that's a percentage. That number is given to you in a percentage. The eCPSU, or the effective cost per swipe up, is the average cost per each swipe up, And then the average attachment screen time is the average number of seconds spent watching your attachment across all of the impressions. So even those that didn't engage with it are counted in that screen time. And then the Snap Ad metrics related to app installs are, of course, the number of installs, the number of times your app was installed, the install rate, which is the average number of installs per swipe, which is shown as a percentage, and then the eCPI, or effective cost per install, shows the average cost per app install based on your ad campaign spend. And then some definitions of metrics related to geofilter advertising. First of all, you'll have access to the following metrics once your geofilter has completed its run. You'll have the number of paid impressions, which is the total number of times your ad was served to a Snapchatter, and it's tracked when the ad fully renders on a device for the first time during a Snapchatter's viewing session. And then you have earned impressions, which are the number of times your ad was viewed after being shared by a Snapchatter via chat or via stories. And the total impressions is the sum of paid impressions and earned impressions. So adding those two impressions together. Then you have shares, which is the number of times your ad was shared via chat or stories. The share rate, which is the rate at which your ad was shared via chat or stories, which is shares divided by impressions. Camera time is the average time your ad was seen on the camera as an overlay option, and that's given in seconds. And then paid reach is the number of unique paid impressions. Unique being a person isn't counted if they were served the ad twice, they're only counted once. So they're counted uniquely once. So what else should you measure? Well, you'll want to look at things like retention rate, so the percentage of people who watch each frame of your story, and see which stories perform better. Stories that are under 90 seconds are more likely to keep watchers interested for the entire time. Then you want to look at the drop-off rate, and specifically not just when they drop off, but where they drop off. Did they make it past the third snap of the series? If not, you may have missed that engagement mark with that snap. And that's where we go back to looking at how you can remove snaps within your story. Because if people are dropping off consistently at the same snap, then it's not creating the engagement you want, and you may want to delete it from your snap story. And then the response rate. Has your audience reacted to your snaps? You'll see this in the form of feedback that they give. If they're responding, you're moving in the right direction. But if not, then you might need to adjust your creative to spur more interactions. In addition, you might want to track the following things on a spreadsheet that aren't part of, I think, the typical reporting. But you might want to track things like your story title, the number of snaps, the length of your story, how many views were on your first snap, how many views were on your last snap, what that retention rate was, and then the engagement of how many people actually screenshotted your snap or sent a direct message. You have to do this within 24 hours of launching your first snap, though, because the snap story just lasts 24 hours. So here's how you might see who's viewed your story. This gives you the steps. So you tap on the three dots to the right of your story, tap on a snap, swipe up on the screen to see who's viewed and screenshotted your snap. And you can see the views by seeing the purple eyeball. And any detected screenshots are represented by this sort of green two-way arrow. So then you can swipe down to exit when you're finished. And again, you have to do this within the first 24 hours of launching your first snap. In our next video, I'll show you some case studies of some successful Snapchat campaigns.